Several weeks ago, I received a letter in the mail, and I received several letters in the mail. I thought, oh gosh, who's this from? Is this another crazy person sending me a letter? And so I opened it and I read it, and it was from Benjamin Vogt, and it was a very interesting letter talking about the disappearance of prairies and monarch butterfly, and asking if the congregation would enjoy a program about this. So I was kind of moved by this letter and the quote by Thomas Merton. That was good. And I went and Googled Monarch Gardens and Benjamin Vogt, and that began a journey or an exploration of inviting Dr. Vogt to come and share his wisdom and knowledge with us today. Dr. Vogt initially grew up in Oklahoma, received his undergraduate degree from the University of Indiana, master's at Ohio State, came to UNL in 2003 for his doctorate, and now teaches at UNL, as well as runs a prairie consulting design and gardens business called Monarch Gardens. If you want to know more, go Google Monarch Gardens and Dr. Benjamin Vogt. He does write one thing that's that caught my attention on the website, and he says that gardens can and should be revolutions that wake us to our world. That is a wonderful, wonderful quote. So I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Benjamin Vogt. Dr. Vogt, thank you for being here with us today and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me. It's fantastic to be here. I have a lot of acquaintances who would probably say, well, it's about time you got behind a pulpit. And they probably wouldn't mean that lovingly. But thank you for having me here. I'm going to share with you today my gardening story, why I garden with native plants, why I hope we all will garden with native plants much more after today, and what's at stake in our environment. We don't think about the wildlife and what we're planting in our landscapes. I think it was last summer or the summer before, but this black swallowtail female visited me. I was on my hands and knees in the garden, where every good gardener should be, and I heard something flapping across the mulch path, and there she was. You can see she's not the healthiest butterfly. She's clearly at the end of her life, missing a wing. A bird probably ate it, picked it off. So I picked her up and I walked her around the garden. I helped her lay 5 eggs, the last eggs that she would ever lay in her life. She probably laid hundreds and hundreds, and she laid them on a native plant called Golden Alexanders. So luckily, some of those eggs developed into caterpillars. You can see this black swallowtail has several different stages, just like monarch butterfly, just like other butterflies. And it's it was humbling and it was an honor for me to be able to help this butterfly fulfill the last little bit of her life, and that I could do that in my backyard. And I think that's really cool and really empowering. I'm going to be constantly looking down at this TV screen too, so I'm not looking at my shoes. Though my shoes are very nice, you should look at them later. I have a couple of slides I have to read, so I'll have to back up a little bit and read this. If you have not read Doug Tolomy's book, Bringing Nature Home, I really encourage you to do it. It will change your outlook fundamentally on how we garden, how our landscapes look. He says, now for the first time in its history, gardening has taken on a role that transcends the needs of the gardener. Like it or not, gardens have become important players in the management of our nation's wildlife. It is now within the power of individual gardeners to do something that we all dream of doing, and that's to make a difference. Trust me, every plant makes a huge difference. My home is the prairie, and it's also its loss. Nebraska is my adopted home. I'm not a Cornhusker fan, I'm sorry, but I do love the state, and I love the region, and I love the wildlife that is here. By 2100, unfortunately, most of the Great Plains grasslands and prairies will be gone because of farming and over-ranching and expansion of cities and roads and things like that. By 2050, we're actually going to lose 30% of all of our global plant species due to climate change and human encroachment. These are scary numbers, but they're not meant to make you feel unempowered. They're just sort of waking you, hey, there's something I can do, and it starts at home. We've lost more than 1.3 million acres of grassland in just a 5-year span here from 2006 to 2011, and that rate just continues to grow. It's something we need to think about and be aware of, especially since we do live in a prairie state. Even though we're the home of Arbor Day, we should be the home of Blue Stem Day, Goldenrod Day. This is the extent of what the Great Plains used to be. All that dark green, that's the range, all the bison, all the prairie dogs, all the wonderful flowers. And this is what's left. The dark green is pretty good habitat, not too far gone. And then the brown is, gone, not very good. So that's how much it shrunk. That. Unfortunately, in our landscapes, we have sort of an illness, as I see it. We have great expanses of lawn, which are completely devoid of any beneficial habitat for anything other than lawnmowers. And lawnmowers don't really need our help. So you can see here, there's a view near my house of some acreage lots, and you can see where the Cornhuskers lose their games there on the left side of the screen. I told you, I'm a Gopher fan. It's sad. So it is a lawn scourge. It's a lawn scourge as I see it. We have over 41 million acres in this country that's in lawn. Here's some scary stats too that you can read up here, right? Of all the dangerous chemicals and pesticides that we put on our lawns that your pets run across, that your kids run across with bare feet, that you track into the house in the bottom of your shoes. Our landscapes aren't very sustainable or ecologically friendly. And if these things are dangerous to us, how much more dangerous are they to the smallest of the creatures that inhabit and share the world with us? Much more, of course. So this is my wife and I's front yard, which is no longer a front yard. Last fall, we ripped up a bunch of grass to install a 100% native prairie garden, 150 native plants. That's the plan I came up with. I think it looks pretty. I'm thinking of framing it. And that's what it looked like this week. It's not very exciting. Gardens take 3-4 years to really get going, but most of the plants are coming up. I have a neighbor across the street who mows 3 times a week, and I don't know what he thinks. I'm scared to talk to him about it. But hopefully I can win him over. Right? So I want to talk about, I want to introduce you to the benefits of pollinators, because pollinators are at the base of the food web, the food system, the base of good ecology in our garden and larger landscapes and parks and wild areas. Insects actually pollinate 75% of all of our food crops. It takes 60% of honeybees in our country to pollinate just the almond crop in California. So that's the dangerous when you have to rely on just one insect. And honeybees are from Europe, right? So they don't know all of our flowers as well as our native bees. We have 4,000 native bee species, and one of them is a mason bee, and it takes, what does it say? There's 250 of them to pollinate an apple orchard, whereas it takes tons of honeybees. So you can see the difference in efficiency and why we need to support native bees and not so much honeybees. And supporting native bees means native plants, grasslands, prairies. See, there's a good stat for you. That's a bumblebee. So the benefits of native plants. 90% of insects feed only on native plants. And that could be adults, or it could be their young, they're caterpillars, their larvae. 96% of birds feed insects to their young. We're talking songbirds like cardinals and robins and blue jays. They only feed insects to young because of the high protein content. Really good food, you should try it sometime. So there are some other stats for you. We're losing lots of bird species in our country. Audubon recently put out a report talking about just in hear the stats, right, of how many bird species we're losing and how quickly they're going due to climate change, due to habitat loss. And if birds rely on insects to grow up and feed their young, then maybe we should be using more native plants and having more native wild areas to help these insects grow so birds can eat them. And of course, those insects are pollinating our crops. So this was our backyard in 2007. We were lucky to move into a nice new house, and I told them, don't put lawn here in the corner. That's what it looked like 4 years later. Full of wonderful native plants. Thickly put together so they're out competing weeds and conserving soil moisture and doing good stuff. It's amazing how many creatures are out there. And then I got lawn right next to it. There's nothing in the lawn. You walk 3 feet over to the garden. Whoa, you know. There's a shot of it in April. I cut it down every mid to late April to the ground. It comes back nicely in July. I've got plants that go up to 10 feet tall, and they're all perennials that come up from the ground. Fall is my favorite season. Number one, there's no lawnmower, so it's quiet. But I also think it's very pretty. It's a season I think a lot of us missed appreciating. And that's getting into November, I do believe. Winter's pretty good too. Leave your garden up in winter because there are butterflies and insects out there that are hibernating underneath the leaf litter, even in the stalks. And then when you leave your plants up, that's going to attract the snow, and it's going to bring in moisture for the plants when they come out in spring. And snow also insulates the plants, keeps them warm over the winter. So I'm going to go through real quick and show you some of the plants and some of the insects that I get throughout the season. This is my first bloomer of the year. It's called passiflower. And I know you probably shouldn't have cell phones in church and using them, but if you want to take pictures of any of the slides, you're welcome to. And then bumblebees emerge. They're one of the few native bees that actually create nests. But the queens are the only ones that overwinter, and when they come out in the spring, they are hungry. They're ready to start a nest. And one of the first plants they go to is Baptisia. Mountain mint is a wonderful plant that brings in all kinds of diverse pollinators that you've never seen in your life. Insects will come and be like, whoa, I didn't know that existed. How cool is that? Rattlesnake master is an interesting one. You can see this one down in Union Plaza in July. Blooming pretty. You can see that it just itself supports over 140 different species of pollinating insects. Purple prairie clover is a good one. Unfortunately, bunnies like to eat it. I don't think it tastes very good, but the bunnies really enjoy it. Culver's root is a wonderful pollinator plant. Little weird looking candelabra spikes going up. Joe Pyeweed is a fun one, and here's why. For some reason, tiger swallowtail butterflies really love it. If you get up real close, the blooms smell like rotting fruit, which must be why they love it. And you can also use the hollow stems to make native bee houses. I cut mine up in 6-inch lengths, put them up on a fence, and I got native bees nesting in them. You can also just leave the stems on the ground too and nest in there. Let's talk milkweed, because certainly along with these other native plants, of course we need milkweed. We've seen monarch butterfly images all throughout the morning already. I tell a lot of people, they say, well, isn't that a weed? No, let's call it milkweed if you want to. That doesn't work, not a good joke. I say on a slide that weed raise. It's more like I raise 100 to 200 caterpillars, monarch caterpillars every year. I buy an old 10-gallon aquarium, put it on the kitchen table, and my wife looked at me like, what are you doing? Because they're pooping in that aquarium. Oh, it's messy. A couple of years ago, I was only able to raise 5. It was such a bad year. But last year was a good year again, and I got up to over 140. So here's the deal with monarchs, right? I suppose some of you have heard this, but if you haven't, here it is. From 1999 to 2010, there was an 81% decline in monarch egg laying in the country. And that's mainly because they need milkweed. The only plant that can lay eggs on is milkweed. We have a ton of acres that have been lost to habitat. Lost habitat, right? And we're talking basically farm fields, and I'll show you that in a second. The monarchs, they fly down from Canada and the U.S. and they go down to central Mexico every fall, usually arriving around Halloween, 2,500-mile journey. And their numbers down there in the winter have just been second lowest ever. The record was 45 acres, which I would like to own myself. That would be pretty neat. So here's the dark green is where most of the monarchs come from. That's where most of the monarchs are raised in our country. If you can remember the prairie map that I showed you earlier and put this on here, this would all be the brown, as in there's no prairie left, except for maybe in central and western Nebraska, there's a little bit more. So if most of the monarchs are in that dark green area and there's no prairie, you're probably not going to have monarchs much longer. And the dark blue is how many acres have been converted recently. Dark blue, a ton of acres converted from prairie into ranch land or agriculture, corn and soybeans. That's a honeybee. I'm not a honeybee fan, that's why I know the aster, and I love asters. Here's some more asters, full of butterflies. There's painted ladies on there, there's sulfurs. It's one of the best plants you can have in your garden, just basically any kind of aster. If you're curious about specific aster species, ask me afterwards, I'll be happy to talk with you about them. I really like asters. But I would say 50% of my garden blooms after September 1st. Monarchs also like specific goldenrod called stiff goldenrod. When they're migrating through, when they're going into Mexico in the late summer, early fall, you'll see them stopping here. Along with New England aster, this goldenrod is prime refueling for them. So what do you get when you garden with native plants? You get moths with really crazy big green eyes. My wife says I have those green eyes, but I don't know. You get dragonflies on my actions. You get a bumblebee hummingbird moth on the salvia. Honeybees on prairie clover, purple prairie clover. You get bees kissing ants. I'm okay, love is love. You get weird guys on monarch caterpillars. At the Lincoln Children's Zoo, if you haven't been, you go. I only went to the zoo to get a picture taken with this caterpillar. We were in and out in 5 minutes. Of course, you get tiger swallowtails and monarchs. And that's a male monarch, you can tell, because of the 2 little black glands on the bottom of the 2 hind wings. This is a queen butterfly. It looks a lot like a monarch butterfly. I've never seen one before in my garden, but it came last summer for a visit. I had an entomologist look at it, and he said he could confirm that it was actually from Texas, a specific Texas population. I don't know what it was doing in my garden, but I hung around for 3 hours, and it was awesome. So you can see the difference. That's a queen, that's a monarch. They both lay their eggs on milkweed, just different species. You get spiders eating honeybees and a milkweed bloom when you garden with native plants. You can all see the spider, right? It's a little tricky. Predator bugs are good to have in your garden. Don't be scared of some of these bugs, like these big old yellow spiders, or when you see wasps coming by. These are good things to have in your garden. That means you're doing something right. You're creating a whole ecosystem that's supporting each other and feeding off of each other. You get sharp-shinned hawks. This guy came in and made a really nice kill on the junco, little songbird. I won't talk about it anymore. If you want to talk graphically about it afterwards, I will. But it's just neat to see the diversity of life that comes in. Mourning dove, mama and her baby. You get bumblebees that give you attitude. You can take them a picture, go away. A lot of pollen. You also get your reflection in a fly's rear end. Good if you don't see it. I didn't know this happened until I went inside and brought the pictures in the process then, so it says something. This was a cool event. My wife called me one December. We were packing and going on a trip and said, "Oh, you gotta come here, get your camera, get your camera, get your camera." The robin landed on our garden bench on our deck to drink some drops of melting snow there on the corner of the garden bench. And then a bluebird landed right behind it, lined up. And then another bluebird landed, lined up right behind it, all taking turns drinking melting snow. So cool. These are the kind of landscapes we need to get away from. Just a straight line of one kind of plant with tons of mulch. Mulch doesn't help pollinators, mulch doesn't help life. More plants do. Something like this. This is a bioswale near the Pioneers Park Nature Center. I hope we all agree that this is prettier than this, and it also supports a lot more life. I almost think it's just as easy to take care of too. Downtown Lincoln, I can't remember what street this is. Does anybody know where the Marriott Hotel is? What street that is? No participation from the congregation. Anyway, there's just planters near the Marriott, Courthouse and Marriott downtown along the sidewalk. And I couldn't believe they actually had some native plants in some of them. And then one day there was a monarch butterfly actually next to it on it. It's like, wow, in the middle of Lincoln, monarchs and native plants. Yes, more. Your kids are going to be seeing a lot fewer butterflies than you did 40 years ago when you were growing up, if you're that old. What are your grandkids going to see? Hopefully more and not less, but I'm not positive about it. But we can make a difference. This is my last slide. This is what I believe deeply and firmly. Your garden is a protest. It is a place, a defiant compassion. That space is one that helps sustain wildlife and ecosystem function while providing an aesthetic response that can move you. For you, beauty isn't pedal deep, but goes down into the soil, further down into the aquifer, and back up into the air and for miles around on the backs of legs of insects. You don't have to see soil microbes in action, birds eating seeds, butterflies laying eggs, ants farming aphids. Just knowing it's possible in your garden thrills you. It's like faith, and it frees you to live life more authentically. Your garden is a protest for all the ways in which we deny our lives by denying other lives. Plants and natives, be defiantly compassionate. Thank you.